Do you like it hot? Well, then we have something for you. We had never seen the film many lists consider to be the greatest comedy ever filmed and one of the best films for all time. Never seen it until last night. So we're going to talk about it, and we will let you know whether or not, in fact, we like it hot on a special Retro Anatomy of a Movie starting right now.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Yes, indeed, it is a special Retro Anatomy of a Movie. Here to do another one of these with my friend Alexa Cappiello, who, by the way, for this installment... TV friend, showbiz friend, you know, off camera.
Friend.
No.
I'm kidding.
We have separate trailers. We have to arrive in different entrances. We talk through our producer. Sometimes Ryan in the booth.
He talks to the hand, and I just listen.
Always talk to the hand. But for the sake of this movie, I will refer to you as Flappy Cappiello, because it's set in the 20s.
Oh,
so,
I thought you were being derogatory.
No, that would be Flabby Cabby, which that's not you. Because you are neither of those things.
Flappy Cappy, all right.
Yeah, exactly. So you can do a little jitterbug as we go along. So, Alexa, thank you for joining me here.
You're so
and
welcome.
Everyone out there, thanks for watching. If you're watching the archive version, please leave the comments, chat down below. I love to engage on YouTube and anywhere else you might be checking this out if you're checking out the podcast version. So what we always like to do when we start one of these retro films is, what did you think the movie was about before you actually sat down to finally watch it? Like, judging from the poster, you know, like, there's clips. There's little things that you can take away from this movie. But what did you think it was about?
Judging by the poster, which I actually hadn't seen until after I saw the movie.
Your whole life?
Honestly,
wow.
I only knew the name. I knew that Marilyn Monroe was in it, and many people told me this was her best work.
Yeah.
And that is all I knew about this whole movie. Just is one of the best comedies of all time. I didn't even see the poster. That's what I'm saying.
What I knew was that it had the delightful Jack Lemmon, who has a cartoon character face, which, by the way, I mean that in the best way possible. That's perfect for old movies.
Yeah,
you know?
and he's
even
hilarious.
when he's an older, grumpier old man, he still kind of has it. So I think it's great. I knew that it had him and Tony Curtis, Jamie Lee Curtis's dad, in drag. And I knew that it was not a lifestyle choice. So I thought, which this isn't too far off, I thought that they were, you know, involved in the criminal underworld and then they needed to go out on the run. Now that is me getting confused with the film Nuns on the Run with Robbie Coltrane and Eric Idle. But that's kind of where I thought that this came from.
You were
I wasn't that far off.
No.
Yeah, they happened to witness something.
Right.
And so I thought about that part of it. I didn't know they were musicians. I knew that song "I Want to Be Loved by You" was from it, and I knew that Marilyn Monroe.
I want to be loved by you. That one.
Do you think Marilyn Monroe really sang that?
Yeah,
I do too,
so.
And I haven't been able to find
controversy.
No,
about
I haven't
it?
been able to find anything online that says she didn't.
Oh, okay.
And usually, if that's not the case, you will see right away that actually it was performed by, you know, some singer of that era that, you know, whose name doesn't live on because
she
they're
can
not
sing though.
Right.
This has been proven.
No, but I was glad to see that.
Oh, okay.
This was a relief because I was like, oh, she sounds so good in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm going to be disappointed when I find out that, you know, it was like a Broadway actress. It was Mitzi Gaynor, who, by the way, when I was reading about this, Billy Wilder, they never expected Marilyn Monroe to have any interest in this movie.
Right, and she was like, I'm interested, cast me.
Yeah, so they were going to have Mitzi Gaynor, who is delightful in South Pacific, but that's neither here nor there. Also,
I think it's cool how ballsy she was and just was like, hey, cast me for this, don't shit me. And then single-handedly almost ruined the entire production.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
But, you know, on screen, she did, you know, for watching the movie cut together, she's great.
Yeah, she's
wonderful. Yeah, exactly. And I haven't seen a lot of movies. Look, she's not in a lot of movies, first of all. I have to actually think of how many I'd seen before this. It might only be one that she's actually, you know, starring in. And I think you're just reminded, like, oh, yeah, this is why everyone loved her. Because you look at her and you can't look away. But she's also got I don't know. She's very likable. You know, I know she's playing this small town. I don't know. What was Cane? Sugar Cane.
Sugar Cane, yeah.
Whose last name is like some long...
Cold Chelsea.
Yeah, some like long Polish last name.
Yeah.
I was just like, sure, why not? But, you know, it's just a reminder when you see somebody who's like a larger than life iconic movie star, you know? It's like if you were to actually... You see one of the few movies that James Dean was in, you're like, oh, yeah, people really liked him. I don't even know how good some of those movies are, but it's like... And I think this movie is good in a lot of ways, but you can't not look at her, you know? And you get that a little bit these days, but it's not the same, I think, you know, in the level
I think Margot Robbie's probably close to that level.
Yeah, although I would say she's more talented in terms of, you know, does she need 47 takes to say it's me, Sugar?
How much of that was... I know, isn't that crazy? It's me, Sugar.
Yeah.
She had a horrible time
Sugar,
saying that.
Sugar,
Like,
it's me.
Sugar, it's me.
It's Sugar me.
Sugar me.
I want to see that outtake.
Me too.
Yeah.
But what was I? I forgot what I was.
So
gonna say
Margot
now.
Robbie, I said she would be able to deliver her lines in less than 47 takes.
Yes, but also how much of that was? Okay, now I remember. How much of that were all the drugs that she was on?
It's mostly the drugs, I would think. I think if... You know, and I know we're jumping around, but because we're talking about Marilyn Monroe's performances, you read that her acting teacher is on set. Arthur Miller, who she was married to at the time, is there. Strasberg, yeah, Lee Strasberg. Thank you. I thank God that the actor in the room knew who it was. Yeah, because it's not my job. You know, it's what you know. Again, it's too late for me for a lot of things. You know, knowing about acting it's I've learned all I'm going to be able to at this point. But so they're on set. You know, so that doesn't help the amount of drinking and drugs in her life. But I was reading that the scene with her and Shell Jr. that's like on the yacht, that they cleared 3 days in the schedule to film it. Mm-hmm. And they filmed it in 20 minutes.
Yeah, because she was just like, all right, today I'm feeling okay, so let's just do it.
That'll just tell you that, you know, that's a little lesson for the kids out there. You know, when you're not all screwed up on, you know, drugs or just some drinking, you can actually get your work done. And that when she was good...
She was really good.
Yeah.
And here's actually a quote from Billy Wilder himself, who directed and wrote the film. He's like, you know, my Aunt Minnie would always be punctual and never hold up production, but who would pay to see my Aunt Minnie? You know what I mean? So basically... I
mean, look, he's selling Aunt Minnie a little short. I'm just going to guess. But.
It was worth it because when she's on, she's on. And
yeah.
When she's not, she's still wonderful to look at, wonderful to... just feel her essence and everything like that. So she was a special person. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and I think that obviously just the way that she's looked at as this tragic figure, you know, who just her life, her life is a sad story. And so when you get to see these brilliant moments of her captured on film, you're like, oh, just imagine if, I don't know, she only... drank half as much, or you know what I mean? Just like, you know, you're not even saying
that
she was 100% clean.
And depression,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Well,
and plus her childhood, I was reading up on it again, and that was rough. That was a rough childhood. She was in like foster care.
Yeah.
She was orphaned and then had to deal with all that, and then got married really young and
a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Elton John did write a song about her. So,
therefore,
you know, yeah.
it's
So
all worth
I'm
it.
just saying, it's you know, and then he changed the words to be about Princess Diana. So I'm just saying.
Then there's controversy about her death too. This is all becoming about Marilyn, but she was just such a core of this movie.
If we're going to talk about this movie,
yeah,
look, I want to talk about Tony Curtis for an hour, but well, actually, I probably would rather talk about Jack Lemmon for 40 minutes. But anyway,
I honestly do think that it was suicide, but people tend to think that.
Well, I think suicide is one of those things that's really hard for people to grasp when you see like, yeah, but you were Marilyn Monroe. Why would you possibly kill yourself? And of course, the answer is because I was Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
And it was just too much to be Marilyn Monroe. I would know because I was at once in my life.
Did you ever see? There's a movie came out fairly recently, maybe a few years ago, just about Marilyn, like My Date with Marilyn or something.
My Week with Marilyn.
My Week with
Michelle
Marilyn.
Williams.
Yes,
Michelle Williams was great, and who was it? Redmayne. What's that actor's name? He was the lead,
Yeah,
right?
I think
Yes.
Eddie Redmayne, right?
Yeah, Eddie Redmayne.
And Kenneth Branagh.
Yes, and it was interesting because we saw how she literally would put it on.
Yeah.
She would like, let me get her, let me put her on, and then it would just like completely transform
Right.
into Marilyn Monroe, and it's interesting. It was really cool to me.
Yeah, no, I think, and it's somebody that has been written about, and there have been movies made about her. But for me personally, I don't know that much about her. So when I read these things about her, it is usually fairly interesting.
This movie was done at the height of her decline. It's terrible to say, but the height of like her basically just being really, really drugged out.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that, unfortunately, I think that it's not too far off, you know? But I mean, as we were saying, she's this huge movie star, you know? And Billy Wilder had already worked with her on The 7-Year Itch, which was 4 years earlier. And the impression would probably be she was a little easier to work with 4 years earlier because of the fact that, you know, look, just all the reasons that we're talking about. You know, I think that you can see there's people out there who don't learn their lines, who are just unprofessional on set. And then there's people who are just too drunk to really get it. Yeah. And I think that she's in that latter category. But at the end of the day, you get to put out a movie that it has Marilyn Monroe at the top of the poster. So it's like, well, you know,
people are going to go see it regardless.
The studio is going to give you 3 days to film one scene because you're going to have Marilyn Monroe in your movie. So, so I think that it's, I don't know, I think it's great that we're able to have someone on that level. And
did you like it? Did you like the film? Did you enjoy it?
There's a lot of things I liked about it. You know, we were talking beforehand, and we try not to give too much away. You know, we want to like keep some of our conversation on camera natural because, as we established, we don't really talk off camera. But we accidentally had a conversation, and I said there's a lot of things that I did like about it. It was more that I was surprised by things. The first thing that I was surprised about was the fact that it was set during Prohibition. So when they say Chicago 1929, I'm like, I had no idea. But in the sequence before that, when they had sort of the, you know, the gunshots in the street and all of that, I was like, all right, this seems like kind of like something you would get in the 1920s. Oh, because this movie's set in the 1920s. The other thing I was really surprised about is ties right into that. There was a lot of murder in this movie.
There sure was.
Like a ton.
There was.
I was not expecting this much murder.
Quite a bit.
Like just the cold-blooded, like gunned down, you know, executioner style murder.
I was talking about back in the day, Prohibition, 1920s. I was really expecting this movie to be in color. And then when they saw that it was black and white, my initial thought was, is this a choice because of the time period? But then I read later that they made it black and white because Joe and Jerry, when they were in drag, it was so garish to look at. Marilyn was like, she was actually pretty pissed. She was like, I want this. I thought this movie was going to be in color. And then they showed her just like a screen grab of Joe and Jerry in drag. And she was like, ooh, okay, let's make it black and white.
Well, I could imagine it wasn't particularly convincing.
Probably
in
not.
color.
I honestly think the black and white contributed to, at least, I mean, the element when you're watching a farce anyway, you have to suspend your disbelief.
Yeah, and look, they do a good job playing with it at times, you know, when they're like, oh, I didn't realize you had such broad shoulders.
I know.
And like, yeah, and an Adam's apple.
In particular, I thought, what was it, Jack Lemmon?
Jack Lemmon.
I thought he made a very ugly woman, and so I thought it was hilarious that the mogul,
Oscar,
the powerful, rich
Oswald,
man, Oswald, fell in love with her as opposed to the other one because he was just so ugly as a woman. I just like the legs. I even think that they had a line in there that was talking about his legs. And
yeah, look, Tony Curtis wasn't much of a looker either.
Yeah.
Let's not pretend.
You're right.
So he was much better as a fake millionaire. You know, I with the
Cary Grant accent.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I think that worked better for him. But I think the choice of black and white has a lot to do with that. You know, I think that's why you're absolutely right. I think that if we were to see them in color, it would take us out of it.
It would.
It's a little too much. The interesting thing is that this film was made. Now, they didn't have the MPAA. They didn't have the Motion Picture Association of America. It was the Motion Picture Production Code.
The Hays Code.
Yeah, the Hays Code. Yeah. And that this film was not approved by it because it dealt with homosexuality, which, by the way, they steer so far away from that. Just the fact that these guys are in drag, you know, until you get to the notion of a man marrying a man at the very end. Mm-hmm. But they really steer clear of it. You know, my wife had seen this movie before, but when she came into the room, it was the point when Shell Jr. is telling Sugar that, you know, he just doesn't feel anything from a woman. And that's sort of one of the things where it's like, well, if you look at it from a modern audience, you'd be like, oh, okay, so this guy's gay. Like, that's what she should think.
Right.
But not in, well, I was in 1959, but not in 1929.
She just saw it as a challenge.
She's just like, oh, yeah, well.
I mean, he knew how to hook her, basically.
Yeah, like, he knew what he was doing.
Yes.
And she's just like, oh, this is a challenge that, this is a challenge I've been training my whole life for. For a guy who can't feel anything from any woman.
Although, I don't know, I had some weird feelings about that scene, actually. I was like, I don't know. We were talking about issues and if it would hold up today, and I just feel like that was a very Me Too type of thing. Very much manipulating and tricking her into...
Yeah, I mean, the entire thing is a long con trying to trick her, because... Basically, she says, I like boats and money. And then he's like, great. I know what to pretend to be now, you know? So it's like there's this old joke from the stand-up comedian Stephen Wright, which is, he was talking to a woman, and the first thing he asked her was, well, what do you look for in a man? Well, I'm Jewish, but I really like cowboys. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Bucky Goldstein. So that's really what this movie is, basically. It's one long Bucky Goldstein.
It's one long con.
Yeah, it's a long con, which, by the way, works perfectly.
I know.
For him, you know.
I know, it worked out for him.
Yeah, he got Marilyn Monroe.
He got her.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm not very bright, so
yeah, and
I'm just going to keep on making the same mistakes. Fuzzy end of the lollipop.
Yeah, I'm not going to end up with a millionaire, so I might as well end up with, with a guy who's a degenerate gambler on dogs, by the way. Those were dogs racing. It wasn't the horse races. No, it was dog races.
I know.
That they were selling their coats for.
I know.
At the beginning
She
of
was
the film.
totally okay with him tricking her.
Yeah.
Just completely forgave it, jumped in the boat and was like, I'm just not very bright.
Yeah,
so.
that's the feeling you get a lot of times.
Fine.
A lot of times from old movies. You almost start to think like, were they running out of film? And they were just like, you know what? We should have a scene where she's like...
It needed to be a happy ending. It did. The whole movie is leading up to a happy ending. But I kind of wanted at least one moment where she was just like, how dare you smack? You know what I mean? Like,
and then the realization of like, yeah, but am I really going to do any better? All right, I'll take it back. Yeah, but yeah, there's nothing. Or
her conning them at the very end of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
She jumps in the boat and they get to the yacht and she drives off on the yacht with the bracelet, like, bye, see you later, sucker.
Right, she gets the yacht for herself.
Yeah.
Or the guy who liked Daphne.
Or
he was the actual millionaire.
Or she just marries the millionaire herself.
Yeah, that's, and
leaves the two guys stranded on a boat somewhere.
They would be right where they started, except actually they'd be in Florida. So, they'd be better off than in Chicago in a blizzard.
I know.
Anyway, so yeah, that's I don't know. There's a lot of ways in which the movie. It's hard to say like, oh, it doesn't hold up because look, just men dressed like women is, just in entertainment. It's like, well, it's not novel, and then in regular life, something that happens a lot more than I think people would have expected in 1959 when the film was made. It's fairly normal. Like if you were to be at a grocery store and the person that was ahead of you was very clearly a man dressed like a woman, you might be like, and you probably go like looking back at your phone, and you know what I mean? Like wouldn't.
Yes, especially, but I mean, there are certain parts of America that aren't used to it yet.
Sure.
But for the most part, I think people are becoming more accepting. Thank goodness. You know what I mean? But yeah, the comedy of it all. Although I did laugh quite a bit when I first saw them in drag. I mean, the initial shock of it all. But I think it was probably way funnier back in the 1950s when you just did not see this very often. So just everything that they did, I'm sure, was hilarious.
The first reveal of them walking in drag is kind of funny, but I'm like, I'm sure when the film first opened in the theater, you see that for the first time projected. You're just like, oh my God, look at these guys. That's so funny.
Yes,
it's kind of amusing, but it's not like I didn't laugh out loud.
Oh, I did. I thought it was
well, good
funny.
for you. But I think it's like
good for
you that you're able to still feel inside. All right, I'm dead. I'm empty. We know this. This is nothing new. I wish that I could have laughed out loud. No,
somebody got the fuzzy end of the lollipop.
I just have
this guy.
I just have the stick part. There's no lollipop left, but I have the stick. But it's the they call chewed and wet at the top of it. Anyway, that's where I'm at. Where are you with the lollipop? Let us know in the live chat. So I think that a lot of these concepts are. They're not as outlandish as they were then,
No. Although it was very funny when she finally got in bed with one of them. And
Yeah.
that was funny.
They did play it up
They did.
a lot, and I thought it was very funny too that what Tony Curtis kept. He kept like popping his Jack Lemmon's bosoms or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you did it again. So I thought that was very funny. And then actually in bed, and I think Jack Lemmon has the great line of I hope you like surprises, and she's like, oh, tell me. It's like, no, let's just wait.
Honestly, I don't know if they would have been able to do the scene where he was kind of being a little lecherous and like looking around. And I mean, all he was doing was looking, no touching or anything. But I feel like, I don't know, people are very sensitive these days. We might be like, oh, he's like, that's not okay. You can't sexualize people, blah, blah, blah. But we all do. We're human.
Yeah.
You look at something, you find it attractive. Sometimes you comment on it to a friend, but like, it's not. I don't know. It depends on what you say and how you say it, but I feel like that would have also been kind of a little.
Yeah, I mean those sequences. You definitely feel the passage of time, like when all the girls are drinking together on the train car. First of all, they're on a train car, so that right there makes it feel like it was a long time ago. But you see all of that, and you're like, okay. I mean, but it's still fun, and you're like, Look, there's times when people say, oh, it was a different time, and you're like, yeah, but that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
To me, there's nothing harmful about the movie being from a different time. But
there is something to say, though. I had an issue with the fact that anytime any of the men were around Marilyn, they always were trying to take advantage of the fact that she was very clearly an alcoholic. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So every single time they were around her, just to get her defenses lowered, they would present her with alcohol. Like, this happened every single time one of them was trying to sleep with her, which was almost like very problematic for me. I was like, oh.
But
I mean, it makes sense in the context of the film, like,
and the context of Marilyn's life.
and the context. Oh,
what?
shoot.
I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. This part was written for her. She didn't have to really veer very far from who she is.
This part
as
wasn't
a person.
written for Mitzi Gaynor. But
also, can we talk about some of her costumes in this movie? Some like it hot.
Yes.
She was pretty much like, I was very shocked to see on screen like some of her little some of her outfits when she was on stage. Like, it was literally just boobs. I was just like, wow, they're like out. And it's something that I would have thought back in the 1950s. I know it's late 50s, early 60s. I would have been like, what?
Yeah, but it's still it's still not necessarily what you expect. But again, it's also Marilyn Monroe.
Yes,
so
and sex appeal. That's what she's selling.
This is right before the MPAA. The code is changing a little bit once you get into even the early 60s. By the end of the 60s, forget it. But and I think that I don't know. I feel like they felt like there was a little more clearly because they put out the movie like this, and I think people want to see Marilyn Monroe look really sexy in this movie. And when you think about it being 1959, the only way that you were going to see her looking like that was to go see the movie again and again and again.
Yep.
So let's have these big production numbers, And I think that they made the most. They were able to utilize her talent as an actress, but then it's also like, yeah, but also look at her. So let's not try and hide her,
right.
And I think there were a few times where like, that's what she's wearing.
What's interesting is that, I grew up in theater and I got most of my training in theater. And so it was very difficult for me not to watch this and compare it to a lot of the farces that I already knew. In particular, Shakespeare's comedies, Twelfth Night. Like, you've seen Twelfth Night, right? Or heard of Twelfth Night?
Yeah, no, I've heard of it.
I mean, Shakespeare's a lot of comedy where men dress up as women, women dress up as men.
Is that the one that has the play within the play of Pyramus and Thisbe in the wall?
No.
Or no, that's a Midsummer Night's Dream,
Yes.
I think. So
you don't know.
I asked the question.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I've seen Hamlet.
It's just interesting because I just kept on thinking about it. The disguise of changing into another sex and the hilarity, the humor that comes out of it, and the situations that you could put yourself in. So it was interesting, and I also think that it was ahead of its time, talking about feeling comfortable in your skin. And sometimes you need to step outside of that comfort zone, or sometimes you're trying to just figure yourself out. Like all of these themes that we're still talking about today with, transgenderism and all that stuff. It's relevant in this movie, and it's stuff that they're even talking about without actually talking about it, just presenting it as a thing. And I think it was way ahead of its time in that way.
Yeah, I think that it is, and it could only be ahead of its time by veering away from the code of that era, by being a movie. And look, I think when you're a film that people are going, adults are going to spend money to see, you have a little bit more leeway than, obviously they wouldn't spend this kind of money on television in 1959. But I do think that they were able to deal with it, but in a way that a lot of people could sit in the audience and talking about in 1959, and they wouldn't necessarily pick up on anything like, a kid who doesn't know what the word gay is, like, just like, oh, they're so silly. Look at how they're dressed.
Yeah.
It's like, it does work on that level. And then, when they're, there's some of the other stuff, you'll be like, I guess that's grown-up stuff. Them laying down on the couch together, that's grown-up stuff, but whatever.
I highlighted this quote in particular. Experimenting with a new identity can help you become a better, happier person. It can help you survive. And if you're lucky, you'll find somebody who accepts you for whomever you want to be, perfect or otherwise. And I thought that was pretty relevant. When I was watching the film, I was like, they all were trying to be something that they weren't, but still at the end of the day, they still found each other and were happy. And that's nice to know. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
no,
cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that I think that there is a good message. And I don't know, look, I think that there are movies from this era that you could see that, look, if you go and see Breakfast at Tiffany's, you have Mickey Rooney doing an unbelievably racist Chinese character. It takes you out of the movie. Mm-hmm. You can't be like, oh, but what about all the other parts? You're like, yeah, but remember when Mickey Rooney had the buck teeth and he was doing the voice? And I'm just like, I get it. That's one of those ones where you're like, it's a different time, but I have trouble with that. I'm just like, it's. I don't know. So this doesn't have anything that just feels like, oh, I mean, but because it's a like, I don't know, not that Breakfast at Tiffany's with Citizen Kane, but I mean, this is a light comedy. I think the tone was right for the story that they were telling, and I think that's why it largely holds up. I don't know of anything where I'm just like, oh, well, this would be a conversation with a kid after they watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's a little bit racy, but in the way of like, in 1959, like racy in movies,
it wasn't that racy.
I'm fairly sure that like sitcoms from when we were kids were racier than this. So I'm pretending we're the same age group, but thank you for not challenging me on that. But oh, now you're gonna laugh though. But I thought that I thought that it was great, and I like that. There's just a very recognizable location that they filmed at. This hotel that's supposed to be in Florida is Hotel Coronado, in San Diego, and it has such a like distinct look to it. I'm like, that has to be the Hotel Coronado. And it was, but I think that they made the most of it, and the yachts and all of that, and just silly stuff like, I'm gonna have to drive the boat backwards. There's no real reason for it, and it's fun. And look, movies that come out now can still be fun, but it's a lot harder to do, I think.
I mean, if we're talking about the script, I thought it was. You said you fell asleep halfway through.
Oh no. So that's because I started at 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And it's also the fact that it's. Look, if it's in black and white, it does make my eyes a little bit more tired.
I know, I understand.
But here's the thing. I was like, I'm starting to get tired, so I paused it, slept for half an hour, and then I watched the rest. So I don't want you to be telling people that it was like, when's Marilyn coming back on? I need some more sugar cane in my diet. You know what I'm saying? But anyway.
No, I thought it was well written, and they
Yeah.
had a lot of callbacks in there. You know, like of course the furry end of the lollipop, the type O blood.
Well, I love how they bludgeoned us with the running gag in the first few minutes when they were at the funeral parlor, where they was like, we don't serve alcohol, we serve coffee. So you have the guy who like 8 times in the first 5 minutes, I need more coffee, and I'm like, all right. We get it, but it was funny because
like the third time, but comedy's in 3, so the third time it was funny, but
then the 8th time, yeah, they went for three groupings of 3, and
they did.
You know, it's so, but that's very indicative. You know, like my favorite sort of trope like that from comedies of an era is you would have the homeless person, we used to call them bums, but the homeless person in the alley, you know, sees something that happens and he looks at what he's drinking and he's like, well, I better drink more, and then he like, you know, chugs it. So it's always like drinking is always funny, you know, in movies like this, you know, leaving Las Vegas less, but you know, generally in movies of this era, it's usually funny. Anyway, sorry, you looked like you were about to say something. I wish people could see that Alexa.
I have
she
notes.
comes. She comes
notes.
prepared. She brought the yellow highlighter.
I did. And
So
I
what?
highlighted
What were
things.
you? What's next?
So when I was watching it initially, I didn't know which guy Marilyn was going to end up with. So.
So you didn't think she would end up with the handsome one?
I mean,
You thought there was
that's
a
the
chance
thing.
that-
That's the thing is that I don't find Tony Curtis to be that handsome. I mean, I thought he was good looking, but he wasn't like.
I mean, but okay, but compared to Jack Lemmon,
I know Jack Lemmon has a very funny face,
Yeah.
but you know, initially he was the one showing the interest in her and all that. So, and being really nice to her and becoming really good friends with her.
Remember, this film did not operate within the Hays Code. But clearly, the two of them did not honor the Bro Code because
That's another thing is something. Sorry, before. So he's off being Cary Grant with her on the boat, right? Schmoozing her, trying to get laid. He somehow convinces Jack Lemmon's character Jerry to distract the
you
big
go dancing
millionaire.
all night.
How did he do? Did I miss a scene here and there? Because
No, they kept cutting to them dancing.
I know.
And then when
I know that.
But when he's back at home, he's like somehow got to bring the maracas home, and it's like, well, clearly he had a great night. I know. You know, I mean that's as close that and the fact that that it seems like he's going to marry a man at the end of the movie.
know.
Like that's as close as they get to like, you know what, maybe that's just who he is.
Nobody's
you know?
perfect.
Yeah,
That's apparently one of the most famous lines in all cinematic history.
Yeah, we'll go into some of the rankings of this, but the fact that you mentioned that, the last line, you know,
Yes.
he goes through all the things that are wrong with him. And, you know, and then the last one is,
I'm a man.
and he says nobody's perfect. That line is apparently a placeholder.
Yeah, it wasn't
They thought
supposed
they
to
were
be
going to have a better one. Now, my favorite story of lines that were a placeholder is a line that is much worse. The film Air Force One, when Harrison Ford says, "Get off my plane," that was always a placeholder. And they couldn't come up with anything better. And like, really, nothing better. But in this case,
this was perfect.
this is perfect.
I don't
I'm like,
think it needed to be
I think
another
that's
line.
probably what it was. They were just like, they probably had a sheet with like 20 other lines. They're like, why are we gonna, you know, do reshoots or additional dialogue recording to get that in?
Yeah.
That's funny.
I know.
That's a great laugh.
Yes,
So,
but also again homosexuality. You know, back in the day, that's suggesting that he literally told him, "I'm a man," and
he's like, no, it's perfect. Yeah, it's like, but
So clearly, the guy is either bi or a homosexual himself. So there's no button around
look,
it.
clearly they're both curious, and in fact,
I thought it was funny.
yeah,
That's it,
and we have right now, thanks to Jeff in the booth, he has a little perfect encounter. See, but you know, and there you see Tony Curtis. He's got the wig off, but he's still made up. I'm sorry, not Tony Curtis, but Jack Lemmon.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, you know, I mean, if I had to marry one of them, it's definitely Jack Lemmon. So, although I
Really?
do love the hat.
Oh, the hat.
Yes,
Yes,
that's
that
tough,
Tony.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, neither here nor there. So yeah, and I think that you know, you just didn't have to be serious about these issues, but in a way that you watch it now and you're like, okay, well, I kind of feel like you're leaving this at a place where it's not that they're not going to get married. It's just that, you know, within the confines of the law, they couldn't.
Right.
But maybe they're going to be very happy together. Let us know in the chat what you think. I know there's a couple people in there. Do you think that they were going to end up together and happier together? Please let us know whether you're watching live or.
So,
on the
long
archive
story
version.
short, I thought that it was written very well. I thought each scene definitely fed into the next. They had some amazing callbacks. Every character was fleshed out. The dialogue was fun, and it was a really good film. One of the best. It's hailed as one of the best comedies of all time, if not the best comedy. Right?
Depending on the list, there are lists that will say that it is the best comedy of all time. Let's see. I had a collection of those, but that's not where it was. But I will find them. The interesting thing is that in its original release, it made $83 million, which in 1959, that's like Avengers money. So for a movie that clearly didn't it's not like it was free to make, but it wasn't that expensive. There's nothing about this movie that looks like it.
No,
cost a lot.
I don't think they went out of California.
Yeah.
They said they were in Miami, but you can easily make Miami in
and,
California.
And the winds of Chicago was basically people, going up to the microphone.
Oh, maybe they were in actual Chicago, though.
No, I don't think so.
No?
I think it's a backlot.
You think so?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I could be wrong.
I was trying to see if it was Universal's backlot, but this wasn't a Universal picture.
No, it was
wasn't.
not. What do you know about the Universal backlot?
Quite a bit.
Oh, really?
No, but that's interesting because I thought they did a good job of representing Chicago.
United Artists put the film out, yeah. You'll see that it does turn up on lists of greatest movies ever made, but you'll also see it as the greatest comedy. Like it's clearly ranked in that respect. It's listed as one of the. There's a list that I can't find the name of. There's a list that says that it is the greatest comedy of all time.
I think that would be the AFI's 100 Years, 100 Laughs list. It's one of them. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah.
The AFI has done, of course, they have their general 100 movies list, but they've also gone through and done by genre. And yeah, right now, 2 gender swap movies, Some Like It Hot and Tootsie are the top 2.
Gender swap films.
Interesting.
There we go.
I do like Tootsie.
Yes.
By the way, yes, this is a tangent. My grandmother was horrified that my mom took my brother and I to see Tootsie. She was legitimately worried about what that might do to us. But it was a funny movie. But I'm going to assume that my grandmother saw with Some Like It Hot, and she probably thought that was funny.
Mrs. Doubtfire is one of my favorite movies.
Oh.
Again, with the gender swap.
Yeah.
It's always funny, for the most part. Always funny to watch a guy dress up like a woman.
Birdcage.
Woman dress up like
which
a
is
man.
a variation on the Kaja Fall. Yeah, I mean, it's and it received 6 Academy Award nominations. Did not win any of them except for costume, and at that time there was a specific costume, best costume design for black and white, which I think, by the way, is fair. Because it's just like if you were going to go up against. I don't know what came out in 1959, but if you're going to go compared to Ben-Hur, you were like, okay, well, clearly that costume would win. But so it didn't win for director or actor for Jack Lemmon, but it won a Writers Guild Award, which I think is fair. And Jack Lemmon and Marilyn Monroe both won Golden Globe Awards. Interesting. Tony Curtis not even nominated, but I feel like he's in the movie more than Jack Lemmon is.
He is, but he's the straight man.
Yeah.
And
quite literally.
Yes, quite
the two
literally.
of them, he's the straight man.
I wonder if it was his idea to do the Cary Grant impression as the Shell Oil guy, or if it was a director's suggestion.
Yeah, I wonder if it was, hey, more like Cary Grant, please. Because that was a perfect Cary Grant.
That was fun.
Yeah. So in that time period, it was very well received. Made a boatload of money, made a yacht load of money. Thank you very much, me. And then also, it at least was nominated for a lot of Academy Awards. Surprising, but here's the thing: when you look at the Academy Awards, a lot of times you'll look at the year something was nominated. And then you're like, I don't know how they picked anything.
Right.
I mean, when you have Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind come out in the same year, you're like, well, you can, you're only one of those things can win in a specific category. So, I think that's fair. But it's there, of course, you have people that at that time. It was condemned by the Roman Catholic Church, the Legion of Decency aspect of the Roman Catholic Church.
Yeah.
That
Could've
gave
called
it
that.
said it was morally objectionable.
Yeah, could have called that too.
Yeah. Well, maybe the Catholic Church could have looked at
Deals
what was
with-
going on,
deals with sex
going on
for
behind
the
their doors. But this is the quote that I wanted to find. Roger Ebert wrote that Billy Wilder's 1959 comedy is one of the enduring treasures of the movies, a film of inspiration and meticulous craft. And the Guardian newspaper in 1967 said that it comes close to perfection. And yeah, for the genre that it is, comedies of that era, it's hard to be like, here's a lot of the things that were wrong with it. There's things where you're like, okay, you can feel like, oh, do they have to lie to all the women in their lives?
They literally, that's something I have an issue with. What the whole movie's about is just lying your way into getting what you want.
First you're lying. The idea of lying to get a free trip to Florida is like, nah, I don't know. Lying because, we're going to get murdered if we stay here.
Both.
Yeah. And then it's like, okay, and we're going to go to Florida. And then it's like...
lying your way into a relationship.
Which, let's be honest, who hasn't done that? Who hasn't put on a yachting hat, tripped a woman on the beach to be like, and then ignored her so that she would then become more interested. I think we've all done that. Am I right, fellas? Okay, no, we haven't. But but at the same time, it's like, that's like a modern day lens of kind of like sort of nitpicking aspects about what were the social mores of that time. I think in a lot of things, it's like, guys are kind of bums, they're very,
kind of?
Well, in comedies,
Right.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's like Jack Lemmon, it's when he's like when he's laying down having drinks with Sugar Cane. But Tony Curtis is like the more traditional male character. Like with the like the receptionist or the secretary at the beginning, who he
feeding her everything she wants to hear just to get whatever he needs out of her.
I actually paused this and went back and I took down what she said to him because it made me laugh. And she says, "What a heel. I spend $4 to get my hair marceled," which I don't quite know what that means, but I guess get her hair done. "I buy a brand new negligee." Come on, Tony Curtis, what are you doing? "I bake a great big pizza pie," and where were you? I'm like, she made pizza. She bought a negligee, and I don't know, $4 to get anything done to your hair in 1929.
Were men worse back in 1929?
Of course they
now?
were. Yeah.
Really?
And now at least we would text to be like,
no, ghosting exists. You know what I mean?
Oh,
And all
you're
these
right.
terrible faux pas that are coming with social media.
But she would have sent a picture of the pizza pie, maybe the negligee draped over the chair, and then wherever Tony Curtis thought he needed to be at that point, he'd be like, well, I guess I can find my way over there.
The entitlement of the men.
And then he has
in
the
this
audacity
film.
to borrow her car.
I know.
And by the way, she says yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
So, I don't know. Yeah, so I look. Those are things that you can look at, and in those moments, I'm like, okay, well, this doesn't.
They're not great people. Somehow we still. That's a credit to the writing and the directing and. All that, but somehow we're still rooting for these two guys, even though
I don't want them to get murdered.
I know, but they're questionable morals.
But there are
here.
several times where they could very well have been shot, where you're like, oh, good, they got away.
Yeah,
But yeah, and
personally, I wanted Marilyn, what's her name again? Shoot,
Sugar Cane
to come out on top.
Kowalski or whatever. You just go with the nickname.
I wanted Sugar Cane to have duped them in the end. But what does that say?
The idea that she could have left them standing on the shore while she drove the yacht away. But here's the problem. If they were left on the dock, they would have been murdered.
I know, but that's the thing is like I feel if we're actually going to comment on duping people, on conning people, at the very end of the day, are we saying that it's okay to do this? Or are we saying
No, we're not saying that. I'm not saying that. But in a movie, it's funny.
It's funny, I guess, yeah.
But yeah, I do think as, from a modern perspective, just one scene where she's mad that he lied to her would have helped.
That would have helped.
But they were look, the movie's 2 hours and 1 minute. Clearly they didn't want it to be any longer than this.
At least she did say, I'm dumb, so I will continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Yeah,
at least she did admit that,
Yeah. I mean, yes. At least she did admit that. Were there any of the little things that we've talked about that we haven't gotten to, anything that stand out, sort of favorite moments, favorite interactions, favorite sequences? Personally, I found the musical sequences that Marilyn did. There's one that after Shell Jr. calls to say, like, I'm sorry, I'm leaving and I'm never coming back. Mm-hmm. And then so the like super sad one. And then like, oh, this is great too. It's just, it's just not as fun. But I thought that they did a great job sort of capturing what I imagine a showroom in 1929 at the Seminole Hotel in Florida would have looked like.
Yeah, they did a great job.
So I appreciated that stuff.
I wasn't expecting so much Italian mob in there. Like that was pretty funny to see.
Yeah, before I let you answer the question that I haven't let you answer yet, that does remind me. That was a moment that where I think Tony Curtis refers to the bunch of gorillas coming after them, which is the group of Italian gentlemen. And I was like, okay, we're just going to have to let that stand. Because what am I going to do? Yeah, what am I going to do in 2019 about him in 1959 calling him a bunch of gorillas? I'm like, all right. But anyway, sorry.
No, it was interesting. I wasn't expecting the Chicago Italian mob to be so prevalent in the film.
Yeah.
And it was fun to watch.
And it's just their dumb luck that the Italian Opera Appreciation Convention happened to be in town at that same hotel.
Yeah, it's true. And that is apparently a thing where they used to meet at
that hotel.
Yes.
Oh. Do you think they still do it?
This movie is actually pretty historically accurate.
Well, yeah.
The background of it all. I mean, the situations that these two were put in.
Yeah,
and
Jeff in the booth has found some
so cool.
interesting behind the scenes of them putting on
Charlie
makeup.
Chaplin. You know what I mean?
Yeah. By the way, Charlie Chaplin, always the good one to point to with that particular mustache. Mm-hmm. Not anyone else who ever had a mustache like that. Always say Charlie Chaplin. Nobody else ever wore a mustache like that. I think that there were a lot of surprises along the way, but it was fun.
It was fun. It was a fun little romp.
And if people remember the last time we did one of these, we did Taxi Driver, and we both wanted fun after that.
We wanted to do a comedy, and I can legitimately say that I laughed quite a bit throughout. Yeah. And there's not... I don't want to say I'm a sourpuss when I watch things, but I mean, not a lot makes me laugh in terms of what's out there currently.
Who hurt you?
Who hurt me? No, but this one, I was watching it with an open mind, and I was like, well, it's an old movie, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But it did. It made me genuinely laugh quite a few times, and Jack Lemmon, in particular, he was just great. And I was researching his training, and he went to Harvard. He went to Harvard,
of course,
and studied some theater there as well. He was on Broadway. By the way, in terms of recent developments with this movie, apparently they are going to be releasing it on Broadway in 2020.
I thought there was a hard reboot coming, and I was interested to hear what the casting would be.
Lord,
but no, a Broadway version.
That's not terrible. I think. I think this would translate very well on stage. Maybe adding even a few more musical numbers in there. I mean, this is a farce. I would hope
there's like 2.
Yeah.
So I would want at least 18 more.
Right. Yeah. So I think that would be actually a pretty good idea. I think they're going to call it Sugar or something like that.
Oh, it's going to be her story.
It's just going to say Sugar.
Maybe. Just maybe she'll take the boat away.
Maybe she'll drive off on the boat with the bracelet and be like, "Peace out.
Yeah.
See you later. I duped you guys. You thought you were duping me. I'm smarter than you all."
Is that actual dialogue?
Power.
Is this the self-tape audition that you're doing for that role?
Yes, me for this role.
You can find her at Alexa Cappiello on Instagram. Well, we're pretty much out of time, but we had so much fun talking about this that I didn't get to a lot of my notes, but we had so much fun. Who cares?
I know.
Now, we'll be back next Tuesday at 2 Pacific talking about another movie that neither of us have seen, but in the interest of the spirit of the season, the film will be White Christmas.
Yes.
Somehow neither of us have ever seen it.
Cheery.
Yeah, so if you have seen it, or even if you haven't, please join us then. But until then, Alexa, where do people find you? I know I kind of already said, but say it again.
You can find me on Instagram at Alexa Cappy, Cappy.
And if you would like, you can hashtag Flappy Cappy if you're commenting on this particular. Yeah,
Cappy,
she'll do
Cappy.
the little. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ, and on this very network, Popcorn Talk, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. doing Marvel movie news, and over on AfterBuzz TV Fridays at noon Pacific, the after show for The Mandalorian, the Star Wars Disney Plus show. Yeah.
Baby Yoda.
Right? I love that Baby Yoda. Anyway, we are out of time. And of course, I love our own Baby Yoda in the booth, Jeff Graham.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. As always.
Oh, no, wait, that's not the noise Yoda makes.
Yeah, it's Chewbacca. It's close
That's
enough.
Chewbacca,
That's
close.
all right.
Not a huge Star Wars guy.
Yeah, that's by the way, that's the best part of that show is that Jeff in the booth is not a Star Wars guy, so he interacts with us like not really knowing much about Star Wars. Just see the Christmas special from 1978. That's the only thing you need to see.
That's what I've heard. That's canon, right?
Yeah, that's canon.
Great.
And that's the best thing that they ever did that with the Star Wars umbrella. But we are out of time, so tune in next Tuesday. But until then, we'll see you at the movies.
See you later.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.